What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review. This time we're taking a look at the return of Swamp Thing. Let's waste no time. Let's get right into it. Now, I think the Return of Swamp Thing movie is okay. I think this movie is very entertaining, as opposed to the original movie. The sequel is much more lighthearted in tone and much more goofier. However, there are a couple of things that I think the sequel does get right, and I will illustrate my pros and my cons. So, pros. The overall look of Swamp Thing in this movie, as compared to the original movie, much better. The overall look of Swamp Thing is much more closer to its comic book counterpart, and the costume itself just looks much more refined. It has much more detail, and it looks pretty cool. And Dick the Rock, the stuntman who played Swamp Thing, returns for this movie, and I think The Rock gives Swamp Thing a very likable personality. Uh, Another thing that I liked about this movie, Louis Jourdan returns as Anton Arcane. Um, Louis Jourdan was really good in that first movie, and he's no different in this movie, though I think he's much more over the top and much more cartoon villainy in this movie, yet still maintaining that hammy yet subdued performance that he put forth in that first movie. He brings it to this movie. His whole resurrection is laughably convoluted. His whole master plan is that he wants to do gene splicing, which is completely absurd, but it does lead to some creative things, especially when it's involving human and animal gene splicing. We get this human leech that fights Swamp Thing at the beginning of the movie, which is very entertaining, and the overall look of the human leech actually looks pretty cool. We get some other human hybrids too that fight Swamp Thing throughout the movie. So the overall, like, what Arcane is doing with the whole gene splicing, it is interesting, and it does lead to some pretty cool looking monsters. Uh, Another good thing about this movie is that I think Jim Wynorski did a good job at making this movie feel like a comic book movie, and a lot of that has to do with the opening credits of this movie, which shows a montage of past Swamp Thing comic books, which I think is a really cool and underrated opening sequence for a superhero movie. And of course, it's being shown to us while Born on the Bayou by CCR is playing in the background, so you can't get no better than that. This movie is embracing its over the topness, and it's going to take great pride in doing so. And I credit Jim Wynorski for, again, creating a comic book feeling type of movie. Like, he knows this movie is going to be over the top. He knows it's going to be lighthearted. So he just wants to have fun, and that clearly shows in this movie. You can tell that everyone in this movie is having some sort of fun, just being over the top, goofy, and hammy. So yeah, that's the biggest thing I can give this movie, is that the people making this movie, you can tell that they're having fun making it. Now, on the flip side, this movie does have things that I don't care for. Heather Locklear, as an actress, especially in this movie, she is terrible. I think she has no chemistry with the Swamp Thing character. Abby Arcane is the stepdaughter of Anton Arcane, and Heather Locklear just has no charisma. And I don't buy the romance that this movie's trying to build between Swamp Thing and Abby. Personally speaking, I would have loved if they would have got Adrienne Barbeau back and expanded upon the romance that was being laid down in that first movie, instead of having a completely different romance. At least I was liking Alec and Alice, even though it was underdeveloped. But they had some chemistry going on. Then again, that was Ray Wise and Adrienne Barbeau. But Dick the Rock and Barbeau also had a good chemistry when The Rock was doing Swamp Thing. I would have liked to have seen more of a continuation with that. I think the character of Abby Arcane, you could have had her in the movie, maybe teaming up with Alice, but have her be more of a side character as a focal point. She's not really interesting. Her whole deal is that she wants to find out what happened to her mother, because, like I said, Anton's her stepfather, so Anton had a role in it. But other than that, she does nothing. The romance with her and Swamp Thing is kind of forced and comes out of left field. Doesn't really work for me at all. Does not work for me at all. There's also this subplot where these kids keep running into Swamp Thing, and the movie doesn't really have a proper payoff to it. To tell you the truth, you could have just had those kids in the first scene they're in, and then never see them again, and the movie would still be the same. When they return, nothing really comes about it. Nothing comes about it at all. This movie is also full of conveniences. Pretty much every time Abby Arcane's in trouble, Swamp Thing has to run to her rescue. It's like a running joke. And I don't think the movie fully embraced the absurdity of something like that. I think if it did, it would have been. I think if it had a little of that self-referential parody to it, I would have bought it. But I think the movie to me kind of ignores it in some areas. So yeah, those are pretty much my pros and my cons. I overall think that The Return of Swamp Thing is an enjoyable movie. It is grossly flawed, but it does got some good things to it, and you can watch it and have a good time with it, which is why it's going to get a 6.5 out of 10. If you want a good time, if you want a time waster, no better than this. It's a 90-minute movie. It's going to go by quick, and you're going to get some enjoyment out of it. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.